Sagamaya, Asatoma Sagamaya, Tamasoma Joiti Gamaya, Tamasoma Joiti Gamaya, Mrityoma Amritam Gamaya, Mrityoma Amritam Gamaya, Asatoma Sagamaya, Asatoma Sagamaya, Tamasoma Joiti Gamaya, Tamasoma Joiti Gamaya, Mrityoma Amritam Gamaya, Mrityoma Amritam Gamaya, Asatoma Sagamaya, Asatoma Sagamaya, Tamasoma Joiti Gamaya, Tamasoma Joiti Gamaya, Mrityoma Amritam Gamaya, Mrityoma Amritam Gamaya. Once together. Asatoma Sagamaya, Tamasoma Joiti Gamaya, Mrityoma Amritam Gamaya. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Om Peace Peace Peace. Bring your hands into Anjali Mudra. Bow your head, offer your practice to someone you love, human being, nature being, or animal being. Visualize them, bring them into your mind's eye. Dedicate your practice to them. Namaste. Okay, so that is a peace mantra. And it relates to the shloka we are reading this week from Krishmacharya's Yoganjalisaram. The mantra means, lead me from the unreal to the real. Lead me from darkness to light. Lead me from the mortality to the immortality of the soul. Krishmacharya, Shloka 5, by seeing, remembering and touching, don't be deluded by objects of the senses. Understanding that all external objects are transient, connect with the eternal self within. And then his son Desikacharya's commentary on that verse. This verse talks about the purpose of yoga practice and the focus that one must develop. Krishmacharya emphasizes the need for detaching from sensory objects that only lead us further into the cycle of delusion, attachment, separation, and suffering. Instead, he exhorts us to connect to the divine within that is the source of permanent joy and happiness. Okay, so this is a fairly common sort of theme that runs through nearly all yoga scriptures. By seeing, remembering, and touching. So the way that we interact with the world is through our senses, and things we see, the things we hear, the things we taste, the things we smell, the things we touch, and also considered another sense as the mind, the things we think. This is the way we interact with the world because we're in a human body. If we didn't have a human body, we would just be able to dwell in the eternal all the time, wouldn't be a problem. But we have a human body, and we're also not renunciates, we're householder yogis. So we're using our senses more than if we were renunciate yogis or monks or nuns, because living in the world as a householder life, we're continually interacting with our senses. And one of the purposes of spiritual life is to withdraw some of those senses so that we're less distracted. And so that's what a monastic kind of existence does to some extent. And he says, don't be deluded by the objects of the senses. So there's nothing wrong with the objects of the senses. It's nice to use the mind and body to experience pleasure. But what he's saying is, don't let that define you. Don't become attached to that as your main reality. In other words, don't become totally absorbed in the material world, and don't become a human doing rather than a human being. So the busyness of life, the continual striving, the continual wanting, the continual desire, the continual need for change, the continual need for advancement, even in a yoga practice, is not something that, if that's something we kind of attach ourselves to, then it limits our potential to pursue the spiritual dimension in our lives. Understanding that all external objects are transient, connect with the eternal self within. So everything in the material world is transient, it's impermanent. We identify ourselves as something that is going to continue. And like the Dalai Lama said, the thing I find most astonishing about people in the West is they live as if they're never going to die. It's like this kind of idea that we've got this, we're immortal, even though death is around us all the time, very close to us often. We still kind of don't acknowledge that so much as we probably should do. And part of a spiritual practice is to acknowledge this impermanence. When impermanence is acknowledged, then we are more comfortable with not needing to experience the world so much through our senses. We retreat to some extent inside. And that spiritual practice is what he's saying is the thing which ultimately can bring you to a more happy, contented, happy is an odd word in a way, but contented and meaningful, truthful state of existence. So that's kind of the message. What I suppose the other thing I would say about this is, it's not easy because we do have a human body. We do have a physical body. And we're kind of designed, and our culture definitely, the way society is constructed, is that it's continually pulling us towards external things. And that is something that as a yogi, you try to keep in check. You try to minimize it as much as you can to leave room in your life for your sadhana, which is any kind of yoga, any kind of spiritual practice. And so that relates to the sutra we talked about last week, where we were saying that how the different ways that you can actually kind of use yoga to make your become more aware of your consciousness in everyday life. That's basically what he's talking about. And that is the purpose of your life. You know, that question, like, why are we here? What we were supposed to do with our lives? What are we here for? From a yogic perspective, the reason you've been given a physical body is so that you can move towards a state of liberation, consciousness, oneness, truth in this incarnation, in this life. That's the reason, from a yogic perspective, why you had this gift of a physical body. It means that your spiritual evolution got to the point where you were ready for this gift. And the idea is that you use it. You don't kind of get on your deathbed and go, what the hell did I do in my life? You kind of like try to work in your everyday life to get to the state where, when that moment of transition comes, because the acceptance and awareness of your transition from this body into another body is a very important part of the yoga practice. That when you get to that point, what you do is you are ready. And you feel prepared for that transition. Because the thing that doesn't change, everything that goes through the senses is continually changing. Everything in the natural world and the physical world is continually changing. It's in a state of flux, like our minds and bodies. But the thing that doesn't change is your consciousness, your soul. And that is the one thing that remains permanent, that you carry with you from incarnation to incarnation. And so that is the thing that you try to cultivate while you have the gift of a physical body. Because who knows, next time you might come back as a wild boar. I don't know what you might come back as. Hopefully a human being, but you never know. So the idea is that you cultivate that soul as much as you can. Does that make any sense? Probably not. Are you with me at all? Does it make any sense? You know that consciousness is the one thing that doesn't change. It's permanent. And that's the thing that connects us all. I mean, there's two things which connect us all. One is suffering, pain. That's something that connects everybody. We all have to go through that. And it kind of, yeah, it holds us together in a way because it's a common experience for every person. But the other thing that connects us all up is the consciousness. Because although we are all very different, we have different experiences of life, the thing that we have in common is the soul. It's the same soul, the same consciousness in each one of us. It just manifests in different shapes and forms. And that is the thing that's permanent. Everything else in your life, your relationships, your family, your career, the money, the house, the car, everything else in your life, and you're kind of clinging to yourself, is all kind of, it's a floating world, impermanent, and you can't control it. But the one thing you can have a permanent effect on is your consciousness. And it's the same consciousness in you and you and you and you and you and me. And it's the same consciousness in a cow, in a pig, in a cat, in a dog. Same consciousness in a tree or a river or an ocean or a star. It's the same consciousness. So he's saying cultivate that understanding. And then, yeah, that's why this prayer, that's why we chanted that prayer at the beginning. Lead me from the unreal to the real. Lead me from darkness to light. Lead me from the mortality to the immortality of the soul. It's a very famous Vedic prayer, which is basically saying the same thing as Krishmacharya is saying here. And the way you kind of like address that is the way to live your life is to perform actions well, but start to let go of the attachment to the result of those actions. That's what frees you from being a slave to the senses and being a slave to somebody who's just continually absorbed in the material world and never finding any time for spiritual practice. And in the second discourse of the Bhagavad Gita, you know, that verse I really like, explains it well. You have the right to work, but for the work's sake only. You have no right to the fruits of the work. Desire for fruits of the work should never be your motive in working. And don't give way to laziness either. Renounce attachment to the fruits. Be even-tempered in success and failure. For it is this evenness of temper which is meant by yoga. Work done with anxiety about results is far inferior to work done without such anxiety in the calm of self-surrender. Seek refuge in the knowledge of Brahman. Those who work selfishly for results become unhappy. Namaste.